Welcome into the latest edition of Hotty Chat with Sports Editor Adam Brown.
And Ryan Hunt.
Today we're going to look at the Week Zero matchups as we actually have football in less than 24 hours when this podcast goes live on Friday today. And then you have a situation of you have the SEC stepping back into Week Zero
Right.
as Vanderbilt Commodores
Mm-hmm.
welcoming in Hawaii into Nashville.
Mm-hmm. It'll be a very interesting year for Vanderbilt. I think they have some expectations. I think you're going to see a very different team. You saw a very good team beat a talented Florida team last year, and so I think this is going to be a year. They're coming in a 17.5 point favorite against a struggling Hawaii team that did not pick up many recruits. While Vanderbilt did pick up some decent recruits. So I think you're going to see a very different Vanderbilt team. I'm not saying they're going to go all the way or they're going to be competing with the Alabamas and Georgias of the world, but I think you're going to see a very different Vanderbilt team than what we're usually accustomed to.
I mean, I agree. I think Clark Lee going into this year has brought momentum from last year into the fold of college football for Nashville, which Vanderbilt needed.
Mm-hmm.
And with Vandy looking at being on Vegas lines,
right.
winning, having over under 3.5,
right.
I think that's going to be easy to do. It might be done in the first 5 weeks of the season. So it's going to be very interesting just to see how Vandy does this weekend.
Right, and I mean, yeah, like you said, I mean, they're coming in with a ton of momentum. I mean, they're getting new facilities getting put in. So, and then yeah, I mean, they had a great win last year against Florida, against a good team, and so I mean, even though Florida last year wasn't the team that they were expected to be, you still beat a big time SEC school like Florida. That has to do something for the guys that maybe didn't get a whole lot of playing time last year, but that would get more now. That like, hey, look, we can compete with teams. We can win games. We can be in it. We can make plays. And so I think, especially for those guys that didn't play as much last year, that saw that momentum carrying into this season, I think it's going to be very different. They got good momentum, and it's going to be very interesting to see just how the first couple of games of the season unfold for them.
I mean, exactly what you said. I mean, like you have the first couple of weeks before you step into conference play that you can build that chemistry, you can build a culture of let's go win.
Right.
And then you have a situation of stepping away from Vanderbilt, stepping away from the SEC. One of the biggest matchups this weekend will be a 1:30 kick at Central Time as Notre Dame takes on Navy in Ireland.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a very cool game. I think I don't think a game's ever been in Ireland before, and I think that's fun. I think it'll be a very interesting year for Notre Dame. They're one of those teams that they're always kind of right there, no matter what. Even if they don't bring in the biggest recruits or get the biggest transfers, they're a very smart team. They're very well coached. They have a great coach, young coach who's done a very, very good job in his first real season last year. Had a couple of losses that didn't play out as well as he wanted it to, but you learn from it, and I think last year was a really big learning year for Notre Dame, and it'll be very interesting to see when you got a team like Navy that doesn't commit a lot of penalties. That's very big and very strong, and so it'll be interesting to see Notre Dame how they compete early on before they play some of their tougher games down the road.
Oh, exactly. And Notre Dame being independent in the fact of they can play everybody
right.
that they want to. But the first game will be against a triple option offense
right.
in Navy, which, I mean, okay, like, if you're going to play them in the middle of the year and only have like a week, 2 weeks to prepare,
mm-hmm.
it might be better that you're playing them right now, so we have all summer to
mm-hmm.
prepare for this, and then you can go back to a more traditional offense. But I think Notre Dame. I think it might be close the first couple of quarters, but after that, I think it's going to be a situation to where Notre Dame just takes over and just wins the game.
Absolutely, I think Notre Dame ends up beating them pretty bad. But like you said, if it's close the first couple quarters, I mean, that's not looking good for Notre Dame for
Right.
Irish fans. I mean, you got a tough game. You know, they're playing. They got Ohio State at home. They get USC at home, but then then November 4th, you travel to a big game at Clemson. So they got USC, Ohio State, and Clemson. Having to play those 3 games, that's not an easy schedule for an independent team that's not in a conference like the Big Ten or the SEC that are playing those big games every week. So I think it'll be very interesting. It'll be really interesting to see those first 2 weeks how the Notre Dame team comes in, because you know, like you just said, if it's a touchdown game at halftime, you know, it's gonna be very interesting to see how the rest of the season goes for them if they can't, you know, beat Navy pretty bad.
Right. And then going from that, you have San Jose State going to play number 6 USC. USC has the dominant dark horse for the Heisman this year,
Right.
and Caleb Williams at quarterback. I mean, this USC. I think for USC it will come down to how well do you play in the Pac-12 in your last year against Utah, who has beaten you
Right.
the past couple games to win a Pac-12 title and knock you out of ultimately the playoffs.
Right. Because I mean, it's been USC that's. I mean, it's been Utah that's knocked them out the last 2 times. That USC does have them at home this year, but yeah, I mean, the dark horse for the Heisman, Caleb Williams has while he is the Heisman, he has a lot of expectations to fill. We saw it with Johnny Manziel after his Heisman year, and he came down off those expectations that everyone thought he was going to be. So I think Caleb, they got some great transfers. Lincoln Riley, much like Lane Kiffin, a very offensive-minded coach. Always has a very good offense, likes to pass a lot, likes high explosive plays. So I think it's going to be a very interesting year for USC. I think USC is a team that if they can win a couple of big games against a team like Utah and Notre Dame, USC could be a dark horse. And I think they definitely want to prove themselves in their last year in the Pac-12, because they haven't really been the number 1 team for a while. And so I think their last year, Lincoln Riley is really going to try to make it a mission to them to beat these teams.
Do you think it's a situation where if they can do well enough that they could be the Pac-12 representative in the playoffs for the first year in like 10 years?
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely think that that USC can go to the playoffs, and I think they will go to the playoffs. I mean, they're going to have to really dig in deep, and Lincoln Riley's going to have to really expect a lot from the defense, because we know the offense is good, but the defense is really going to have to step up last year compared to what it was later in the year. But I mean, Caleb Williams is really going to have to be a leader on this team. He's not a freshman anymore at Oklahoma, coming in in the second half of the Red River rivalry. I mean, he's really going to have to be a leader on this team, and really be a role model for these younger guys in these final couple of years, and this final year.
Going off of just picking games, let's talk about the Heisman race.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, okay, right now we are less than 24 hours to kick off of the season, officially for Toddy and we finally get college football back.
Mm-hmm.
But it's one of those situations where you have a Heisman contender sitting right here on this campus in Quinshon Judkins after a monster freshman season.
Right. And I think much like we talked about Caleb Williams, there's going to be a high expectation for Quinshon Judkins this year, right? no one really knew who he was coming.
Right.
Unless you really, really, really follow Ole Miss football, no one really knew who he was. Everyone had their eyes on Zach Evans coming in last year to replace Snoop,
Right.
and Quinshawn ended up. I mean, both of them were incredible last year, but Quinshawn really ended up taking the role out of that. And so I think much like Caleb Williams, Quinshawn's there's going to be a lot asked of him, and maybe that's unfair to ask of a sophomore that's 19, 20 years old. But I think he is very, very dedicated. I've heard a lot that he has improved incredibly over this off season, and so I think you're going to see a very good year from him, and so you never know. I consider him a dark horse.
I am too, but I consider him being one of those that you put him in the situation of, look, you have this much pressure on you, he can handle it.
Absolutely, and he's very smart too, and that is his maturity level for being so young and adapting to everything that was going on last year. It was very, very, probably the most impressive thing in my opinion. So I absolutely agree.
But another one on my list would have to be Marvin Harrison Jr. Just because he's at the Ohio State. We all know who's dead, what he is,
right,
and how he plays.
Right.
He plays just like his dad played. And it's just one of those things that it's just going to be a coming to pass situation of him going from college to the NFL.
Oh, absolutely. And I think he's probably one of the most talented receivers in college football, if not the best receiver. You can put Xavier Worthy from Texas up there, but I mean, I think he is. You said he plays just like his dad, and man, is he good. I mean, they'll have to replace, C.J. Stroud, which was a loss for them. But Ohio State, like always, gets a very nice quarterback recruit that will come in, and that's the nice part for teams like Ohio State. They'll have a couple of games where they can really get into it before Big Ten play starts. But I think he is a very, very talented player.
I know that we'll talk about this in the next couple of weeks as September 9th gets closer. But what's your thoughts on Quinn Ewers and Texas right now?
I personally think Texas is the best team in college football.
Wow.
I think Georgia is the best team. I think Texas is the most talented team. I think they are we'll really see what kind of team they are when they go play a tough Alabama team. But I think Quinn Ewers is absolutely amazing, and he's doing a great job, from what I've heard, mentoring Manning and really, really helping him fill into his shoes. And enormous props to Manning for coming in with that last name and that expectation and saying, yeah, I will sit a year and learn. So, but I think Texas and Xavier Worthy and Quinn Ewers are a very talented bunch. But it'll be very interesting to see what happens when they go play Alabama.
I know this is going to be a real early season hot take, but I think you might see a situation where you'll have LSU play Georgia for the SEC title.
Absolutely.
Then you might have a situation of Texas plays LSU for a national title.
I think that's a very realistic expectation. I think Georgia, it's going to be tough to beat them, especially when they go play them in Atlanta, where it's going to be majority fans. But I think that's an absolutely realistic thing to happen, and it'll be interesting to see, where everyone does fall. Because I could even see a team like, let's say, LSU and Georgia are both undefeated, and then Georgia wins and they get the 1 seed and they play a 4 USC, and then a 2-3 Texas LSU game is a very realistic thing as well that we've seen in the past when two teams from the SEC have come into.
Do you think it might be a situation where you only get one team from the Big Ten this year, and the game will be decided between Michigan and Ohio State?
I think that's always that's what it's been the last couple of years. It's been really coming down to that game. I think Michigan has one of the best running back rooms with Blake Corum. I think he's one of the most talented running backs in the country right now, and especially after what happened last year when they walked into that Fiesta Bowl expecting to kind of beat up on TCU, and they Max Duggan really sat them down, and so I think they're coming in with some fire. We'll see what kind of happens with this whole ongoing thing with Harbaugh and those 3 games, but I think it definitely comes that they play a tough Penn State team. I think it really will end up coming down to the Ohio State team, where they're playing them at Michigan this year as well. So I mean, it'll be very, very interesting to see what happens in the Big Ten.
For me, it's been the Big Ten. If you look at how Michigan and Michigan State are going to play this year,
Right.
Michigan State is on a train that could end up 11-1, anywhere from 7-5 to 11-1.
Right.
And it's going to be a situation of where do the wins come from for them? What does the defense look like?
Right.
So,
And Michigan State always plays up to their opponent. They're one of those teams that always plays up. So they'll give the Ohio State and the Penn State and the Michigan their biggest games. But what happens when they go play a team like Rutgers,
Illinois,
a Northwestern team? One of those that I don't know if they pick up those games, or even a better team like when you got to go play at Purdue or at Iowa, that very loud, very passionate Nebraska. Do they pick up those wins? Michigan State's one of those very interesting teams. I have them more down towards the floor of that 7-5 kind of range. But I think Mel Tucker has started a great program there, and he's really got a great vision. They need to get some better recruits, and they're going to have I think they'll now have a tougher time with a team like USC coming into the Big Ten next year and having to recruit with them, and so. It'll be a very interesting team to see how Mel Tucker deals with adversity, because they will have adversity throughout the year.
What do you think about Luke Altmaier being named the starting quarterback for the Illinois Fighting Illini?
I'm happy for him.
I
It was I saw that. I said, you know what, none of us are him, and we can't tell him. We don't know what it's like to have to transfer and things like that. He was always a fan favorite all over Oxford, and so I wish him nothing but the best. Very happy to see him get the starting job there and finally get a real starting role at a school. So I'll be watching. I'll turn on a game, and they'll love him in Champaign, and he's just I'll be rooting for him all year. So very happy for him.
Yep. Well, we'll end with this, but I just saw on Twitter that the Mississippi High School Association is going to move the state playoffs to the vault this year after being in Hattiesburg the past couple of years. But this evening, the Carlson Classic will kick off high school football as Oxford Fed play. Usually right before region starts, but tonight they'll kick off the start of high school football.
Yeah, it's awesome. Football's back, and I think everyone's very excited for that. It's been a long, hot summer, and so football's back, and we're ready to go. And it's great for the city of Oxford that now that game is going to be played in the Vaught. And where before Ole Miss, everyone knew what Ole Miss was, but now it's really coming around, centering around, the university. So I think that's an amazing news. That's going to happen, and that's going to be we'll see. Well, that's a great recruiting tool as well. Those kids, there's it could be a lot of talented kids that come play in that stadium for that game, and so to have them on our campus, and you better believe Lane Kiffin and those guys are going to be there. So that's going to be a great tool for Ole Miss, and it's going to be a great thing for the future.
Talking about recruiting tools. Last Saturday, Ole Miss picks up the 35th star the third five-star player in Cameron Franklin out of Lake Cumberland.
Mhm.
A huge year for the Rebels in 2024.
Absolutely. I've watched a little bit of film on him, but very, very talented, very, very quick, great reflexes. The part that I've seen is his IQ is very, very strong for being a young kid. Incredibly good football IQ, and that's something that you could be very talented, you could be very fast, you could have all those abilities, but if your football IQ's not there, it's not going to pan out over
Right.
4 years. You can work on skill, you could work on getting that more athletic, but his IQ is very, very strong, and I think that is going to be an incredible asset. And Lane Kiffin is doing a wonderful job, not even in the outside the transfer portal, but just in recruiting in general.
He really is, because he told the media before the pass that yes, the transfer portal is good for right now,
Mhm.
but to build a program is to build from high school right. Now that he's doing that,
Mhm.
you'll see the progression of Ole Miss football go from high to high.
Absolutely, I think you'll see the next couple of years, you'll see less and less transfers coming in, and more 4 or 5 stars coming in through as freshmen. I think that's, like you said, that's going to be great for building a program. That's what Alabama's done so successfully. Was they don't go get transferred. They bring in these kids and they build them up, and I think that's what Lane Kiffin knows that from being the offensive coordinator there. And I think he will continue to build a very strong program and a very strong legacy, especially with those recruiting tools, with the new Manning Center, and all these new facilities. And so that's going to be it's going to be a great couple of years to be an Ole Miss student. That's for sure.
It really is, and a great time just to be on campus to see what's going on.
Mhm.
But that's all that we have for today. So we appreciate y'all just tuning in to us. We'll be back next week to look at Ole Miss's schedule starting next Saturday afternoon at 1 o'clock. But thanks for tuning in. Talk to y'all next week.